Assalamu alaikum, dear students. In our last class, we talked about high-impact language, and there we studied that high-impact language is a name of three important things. Number one, high-impact word, high-impact structure, and high-impact appearance. High-impact word means two important considerations, to keep in mind. Using short and familiar words, and number two, avoiding wordiness. And high-impact sentence we studied, as you know, that they are simple, compound, complex, and compound complex sentences. High-impact language means language containing more simple and, complex sentences. And we talked about that it's a simple sentence, which carries in itself the highest impact. And complex sentence, has two, features. Number one, it has high impact, plus variety is also there. Compound sentence is something, which has lower impact. Now, if you want to increase impact of your writing, so what you would do, as per structure is concerned, simply, you'll be using a very good mixture of simple and complex sentences. And we also talked about the counting of these sentences, and I said, compound sentence is equal to two sentences. So it means if there is an inclusion of 2 to 3 compound sentences in your paragraph, they will not be counted as 2 to 3 paragraphs, rather 4 to 6 sentences, actually. And then we talked about high-impact appearance. Now, high-impact appearance means that your paragraph size should be pretty controlled one. 3 to 4 sentences, is an ideal paragraph. And then if there are any multiple ideas in your paragraph, indent and itemize them. Don't put them, inside the paragraph. Rather, apply some bullets if you can, so that, its multiplication, could be brought out of the unified and the compactness of that paragraph. And then we talked about the white spaces. Of course, a text with lots of white spaces inside has got an eye appeal. And a text which has no, white spaces, or white spaces are out of the text, of course, its appeal, would be, of course, lost. So if you want to have high impact appearance, then, of course, you'll have to, manage your paragraph size. You'll have to manage the multiple ideas. You have to simply indent and itemize them, and then have lots of, white spaces inside. Now, today in this lecture, of course, I'll be focusing on signal words, which are actually the transition words. But before I, discuss with you signal words, I would like to give you one example of high impact, language. Putting, high impact word, high impact sentences, and high impact appearances, together, and see, how a text which has neither high impact words nor, sentences or, appearance, how to change a low impact text into high impact one. Let's take a look. On your screen is one, paragraph. Now, this paragraph, you can take a look. If you just go through it, you would feel that, of course, there are Latinate words, not Anglo-Saxon. All words are very difficult, and longer, of course, in length, 3-syllabic, more than 3-syllabic, hard words are there. And then you would see that, sentences especially, they are of quite long. As you know, that good sentences, 17 to 20 word length. But in here, you would see, increasing, this average length and going to 30, 40, word sentence. And then there are no white spaces inside. All white spaces are out of the text. And then you would see that, sentences which they're not in active form, they are in passive form. They are more simple and compound in nature. Complex features are missing. And more that if there are any multiple ideas, they have not been itemized. Now, this paragraph we are going to change in high impact language. Let's see what changes, we'll bring about. The first change will be, of course, I'll add topic sentence to this paragraph. Now you can take a look. Reading this paragraph, reader would, of course, be in a confusion what actually writer wants to talk about. Why? Because the topic sentence, which actually carries the central idea, the central theme of your writing, that was missing. So what first change I have brought about is I added topic sentence to this paragraph. Let's see the second change. The second change will be I divided this paragraph into this text actually into smaller paragraphs. Of course, how I did it, very simply, I went through it and then I asked myself how many ideas are under discussion, and then I came to know that in this text, not one, more than one. I mean, multiple ideas are being discussed. So what I did actually, those multiple ideas, if there were 3, for example, so I changed that text into 3 separate paragraphs, because a paragraph is the one which has unity in it. So for that factor, the 3 multiple ideas I put into 3 separate paragraphs. This is change number 2. Change number 1, I added topic sentence, or you can say action line, to this text. And now reading the first sentence, one can understand the writer's aim and objective. And then when I changed this text into paragraphs, now it's very easy to read. Previously it was so difficult. Why? It was such a brick wall feeling, for the writer. It was sort of like, off-putting, for the reader, to, understand and all. So, into paragraphs. Let's see the third change. The third change, what I did, there were lots of Latinate words in this text. What I did, I simplified simply those words. So the word choice has been, simplified. For your understanding, I can compare and contrast the Latinate and Anglo-Saxon words, which Latinate, of course, they were originally in the text. And I, found out some simplified, their parallels, and I, used those. For example, in the first sentence, you can see exchange and interchange. Previously, the word was interchange, which is difficult. And its easy version I introduced is exchange. Now, a few thoughts could be exchange, not interchanged. Okay. And then the second line, the word is have been around, or have been extend for around. I mean, at the place of extend for, I, feel it, suffice that if I use just have been, no need to use, one extra, verb to carry along the meaning. So, have been for extend for. And then the word is approximately. At the place of approximately, I use the word around. Now, around, if you compare these two, around is such an easy and familiar word, and compare it, with approximately. Another change is half a decade, I changed into 5 years. Now, half a decade into 5 years. 5 years is more concrete, okay? And external markets. This word has its simple version, very easy to understand, quite familiar, that is customers. Now, external markets, why to use external markets when an easy word customer is available for you? What actually writer was, wanting to? The next one, conceptions. Conceptions, ideas, I, brought in. And alter or alleviate. Now, these, two words. And I preferred a very short and familiar one, which is proceed. And then is subsequent occasions, and I just used the word future. So this is how, like, I'm simplifying the word choices in this text. And then comes involved, and then working. And then there are people who have used inter-office systems, and it was like used as external systems. And then interchange, I said made available. Fundamentals was one word, and I, replaced it with keys. And then contemplated, its easy version I found is, thought. At the place of contemplation, I use the word thought. And then comes instability, ease of installation, effortless utilization, and I used simplicity of use. So this is how all these words, have been simplified. So the first change I introduced to this text is action line I added, which is actually a topic sentence. Second change, I divided the text into smaller paragraphs. Third change, I introduced simpler words, not Latin, rather Anglo-Saxon. Easy, short length, and, quite familiar. Let's see what's the next change. The next change is sentence length. If you see, in the original text, sentences were of, I would say, 30, 35, 40 word long. So what I did actually, I, cut them into two, frankly speaking. From one sentence, I was able to make two. So I have, of course, done the same way. Now, you can see in the first paragraph, instead of having just one sentence, I introduced two. And exactly the same way, in second paragraph, there was also, again, one sentence. And I, changed it into two. Now, just imagine there were 3 paragraphs. And each paragraph was of one sentence length. And this is something, I would say, cruel being on the part of, writer, that he is, writing in so long sentences, and a reader, of course, will be conveniently, lost in the length of the sentences. So it's always nice if you cut your long sentences, into short sentences. So this is what, we've done as a fourth change. In the next, what I did, all the sentences, if you see, they were all passive, and I introduced active. Now, sentences are all active. Subject is very much there, and the focus is now not on the action, actually, rather on the actor. And the next sentence comes as, all the multiple ideas I have indented and itemized them. As you know, multiple ideas cannot sit in one paragraph. They have to be either in the form of separate paragraph, or we can always, itemize them. We can apply bullets. They can be visual, bullets, of course, 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. So this is how, a text can be changed into, multiple ideas. Now, if you compare the original text and the one which we have produced after bringing about so many changes, there is a huge difference. Huge difference. Reader will, feel it compelled actually towards your text. Previously, it was so off-putting, and now there is an eye appeal in it. Lots of white spaces are inside. Multiple ideas are itemized. All sentences are active. Words are in short and familiar form. And, a paragraph is of controlled length. Sentences are, short enough for the reader to understand. This is what actually we mean by high-impact language. High-impact word, high-impact sentences, and high-impact appearance. This is how we all, mean actually by this high-impact language. When you are writing paragraphs or you are writing, essays, do 2 things. Number 1, analyze your essay topic very, very carefully. Find out the strategy, find out the content, and then see how many are the prompts inside the content, and try to, discuss all the prompts. If you missed even a single one, the reader would feel as if writer has missed out some important, aspects of essay. So he would, of course, declare it, as if incomplete thing. So try to, cover up all the prompts inside your essay. And at the same time, take care of the impact of your writing also. Make it high impact. If it's a non-sensitive message, make it high impact. Take a look of your words, take a look of your sentences, and see, the appearance as well. Let's now move towards the actual topic of the day, which is signal words for text's organizational structure. Now, what are signal words? Signal words are actually transition words. They help readers to transit from one idea to another. Signal words, they are they create a map actually of your writing on a piece of page. Like the way map guides, the travelers, which street they are now, and from that street, if they want to move to XYZ street, how possibly they can move, the distances, like, they can measure and all. Exactly the same way, readers, through these signal words can very much easily understand the relationship between ideas and how ideas are being, led to, each other. They are also called as text patterns. I mean, if I give you a pattern, for example, let's say a pattern is of colors, and I'll ask you a question, what comes next? Let's say the pattern is red, yellow, red. And now my question to you is, what color would come next? Of course, yellow. How did you know it was yellow? Nowhere it was mentioned anywhere, or I also didn't tell you that, it's the answer will be, of course, yellow. Of course, the logic that the pattern which I shared with you, first was red, you analyzed it, first is red, second is yellow, then again red. And out of this analysis, you can easily predict that the next one will again be yellow. Exactly the same way, these signal words help readers predict what ideas, writer will be discussing next. Even they help readers, make analysis of what writer has discussed before, what is his current discussion, and how he'll be moving into the upcoming, point of his discussion. For example, if I say in one piece of composition, if you find written first, and you also find written, let's say, for example, you find written however also, you find written in contrast also. Now, let's see these four signal words, how they predict his, the readers about the whole text. When writer uses first, it's a message for his readers that when I'm saying first, it means be ready for the second also. Now, reader can very easily predict that after this, there is one more argument coming, which can be second. So when you say second, there may be third also. So this is how he can predict. If there is, for example, reader knows that when writer tries, for example, it means he wants to illustrate the previous argument. I said, like I shared with you my argument in by using signal word first, and then came for instance or for example. Now the message for the reader is that this for instance and for example is the illustration of the previous argument. And if there is any signal word however, now reader knows however means writer wants to talk about the contrast. Whatever he has discussed before is now he's now gonna talk about the opposite side or the other side of the coin. In other words, you can take it. If reader uses the word finally, for example, writer uses the word finally, for example, of course it's a message for the reader that this is my last argument. After this is not coming nothing. So signal words actually help readers understand the text. That's what we call text's organizational, structures. Now, I would like to illustrate these signal words by giving you, one example. I'll show you one text. We'll together read this text and try to understand, what writer, is talking about, and if he is using any signal words or not. If he is not using signal words, then we would ask ourselves that we as readers are comfortable enough to read this text, or by adding, some signal words to this text, we can make it better for the readers. Let's take a look. On your screen, there is one small essay. Title is Benefits of Private Vehicles. Now, in this small essay, there are 3 paragraphs. Paragraph 1, of course, will be the opening paragraph. Paragraph 2 is the body of this essay, and the last paragraph, of course, is the conclusion. Now, let's go through it. The first sentence goes, private vehicles play a key role in our lives. This is the first sentence. Then the second sentence, They provide independent transport, freedom, and many jobs. They cause pollution, traffic jams, noise, and death. Now, in this paragraph, 3 sentences are there. The first sentence was the opener. The second sentence, we talked about the benefits of private vehicles. In the third sentence, we all of a sudden started talking about the drawbacks of private vehicles. Now, look here. Reader is confused in this, reading this, paragraph. Why he's confused? He's confused about the stance of the writer. He's not sure that writer wants to talk about the benefits or the drawbacks. So this is one problem in this first paragraph. Now let's see the second paragraph. Private transport, especially the car, gives us freedom to move. We no longer need to organize our lives around bus or train timetables. Many people think that their cars are indispensable machines. They cannot live without them. Now, by reading this much, I'm actually lost, and I'm sure you also, that we do not know that, as there are no signal words perhaps in this text, that's why, we are confused and perplexed, that we are not sure which line is writer's argument and which line is the, let's say, is an example, for example, as an illustration, and which sentence is a cause, which sentence is an effect. Is he comparing things or not? I mean, the things which we discussed, in paragraph writing, order of importance thing, there are certain words which we use to show order of importance. We use certain words, to compare and contrast. We use certain words, actually, to show sequences, actually. So all these things, so far, reading this, text, I feel that since the signal words are missing, reader is totally lost. This is what actually the beauty of signal words is, that, they very smoothly let readers transit, move from one idea to another idea. If you remove signal words, from your text, the logical link between and across ideas will be lost somewhere, and reader accordingly also lost. So the logic link, the connection between ideas, has to be very much there for the readers to understand. Otherwise, it would be like, in the real sense of the concept, the paragraph, then this will be more of a group, different sentences, put together without having the joints. Take the example of your arm. There are joints, hand, and then this elbow thing and your arm thing, the joints actually inside, and this is how they are connected. If you remove these joints, your sentences will not be able to hold themselves together. Therefore, in this text which we are discussing, signal words so far are missing, and we are lost actually. Which one is argument? Which one is illustration? Which one is cause? Which one is effect? Let's study it more. People who live in rural areas need private vehicles to go to towns for shopping, socializing, taking children to schools, etc. Without a car, their lives would be very difficult. They would be forced to rely on infrequent public transport if it existed at all. Many families who live in the country have one or more cars. They would be cut off from the rest of the world. There is no logic. There is, no sense actually in the text. What is happening? Why that stuff is missing actually? And the conclusion, makes it out as, for many people, a car is a necessity. Now, let's improvise this text. To improvise this text, of course, we'll add, signal words to it. Otherwise, this text is perfect. We did not find any grammatical error, any, lexical choice error. Punctuation is perfect, no spelling problems, everything is fine. Text divided into, paragraphs. Opening paragraph is there. The body of this whole essay is very much there. The closing is, very much there. Very nicely organized. What is missing? Signal words. Now let's add signal words, to this text. Like the first, if you take first paragraph as an example, 3 sentences were there. Now we have to understand the relationship of these 3 sentences first of all. Like the first sentence, private vehicles play a key role in our lives. Now important word in the sentence is key role. Let's see the second sentence. Second sentence says they provide independent transport, freedom, and many jobs. Now, dear students, look here. We said key role. And then we talked about key role in concrete form. 3 key roles we talked about. What? Independent transport, freedom, and many jobs. Now, these are 3 key roles. Now, let's compare these 2 sentences with each other. If in the first sentence you are talking about a global opener key role, in the second sentence if you talk about concretely and narrowly what are those key roles, then the second sentence becomes an example of the first, sentence. Like, now this first sentence, key role, second sentence is the explanation of that key role. It means the second sentence is an explanation, signal word we can use as. Now, if you combine these 2 sentences with the help of as, the logic link will be there. Look at the job of the signal word, what it has done. It has, made the whole concept clear, the whole idea clear. Now, the sentence goes as, private vehicles play a key role in our lives as they provide independent transport, freedom, and many jobs. Now, as is a signal word, which shows what? It shows the argument which I discussed before, right, is actually further explained in the next argument. So, as, if the left side of the as is the main argument, the right of the as is actually explanation of that main argument. If you read the third sentence now, they cause pollution, traffic jams, noise, and death. Now, this is an antithesis. This is the contrasting, actually, the contrast of what we've talked about. The other side of the coin means not benefits, drawbacks of private vehicles. Now, what's its relationship with the previous sentence now? Of course, in the first paragraph, writer tried to share with you the both sides of the coins. First, he talked about the key roles, then he talked about 3 key roles. And we combined the first 2 sentences with the help of as. In the, second sentence, he discusses the drawbacks. And drawbacks, which is what? The opposite side or the other side of the coin. There is one signal word, and that is however. We use however to discuss the contrasting statements in the same sentence. Now, if I add however at the start of the second sentence, you would see now our first paragraph is in, I would say rather, compact form, everything holding together by the inclusion of 2 signal words. Between the first 2 as, and then between the first and the second sentence, however. Now your sentence will be read this way. Private vehicles play a key role in our lives as they provide independent transport, freedom, and many jobs. However, they cause pollution, traffic jam, noise, and death. Now, there is a smooth, sailing. Start from the first word, go down to the last word of the first paragraph. Everything is connected in a logical link. This is what actually the function of signal words is. Without signal words, readers are lost, confused. With signal words, the relationship between ideas is clear. It's clear that which one is the main argument, which one is the, let's say, minor argument, and which one is the explanation of which argument. This is actually the role of signal words. Signal words, with the help of signal words, you lead your ideas. One idea moves into another, another into another. So this is how, your text flows down to the conclusion. Now, let's focus onto the body of this essay. This first sentence in the body of this essay started this way: private transport, especially the car, gives us freedom to move. Now, look here. The topic is benefits of private vehicles. In the first sentence, writer has set the scene, what he will be talking about. He discussed, the both sides of the coins. And now, in the second paragraph, he will construct his arguments. And he has given the first argument. So, why not we start our first argument with the linking word or the signal word first? Okay, now let's see how this first as signal word should go with the first argument. Like on the screen, firstly, private transport, especially the car, gives us freedom to move. And then the second sentence is what? We no longer need to organize our lives around our bus or train timetables. If you analyze the first two sentences, yes, we have added firstly as signal word with the or at the start of the first argumentation, just to give a message to the reader that this is my first argument and there'll be more arguments coming. Now, the second sentence, if you see, that basically is the result of my first argument. Like the first argument was freedom to move. First argument of the writer is that private vehicles give us freedom to move. Okay? And if the freedom is there, then there is no need to organize, our lives around bus or train timetables. So the second sentence actually is the result of the first argument. Now, there are different signal words, which we can use to express or show results. Like you can use so, or you can use therefore. Smaller the better. Now, we will be using so at the start of our second sentence. So this is how the first two, sentences will be linked. And the idea will go this way. Firstly, private transport, especially the car, gives us freedom to move. So, we no longer need to organize our lives around our bus or train timetables. After this, when I read this text, I feel that perhaps, that is the second argument of the writer. Like, many people think that their cars are indispensable machines. So since this is the second argument, so I should, start it with secondly. First argument, I started with firstly. Second argument with secondly. And if you see the next sentence, they cannot live without them. Now, if you analyze carefully, the second argument is composed of actually two, you can say parts. One is what? Many people think that the cars are indispensable machines, and the second is they cannot live without them. Of course, indispensable actually means the same thing, something which is highly, highly essential, and without which life is not possible. Therefore, we'll be linking these two sentences with the help of a simple conjunction and. Sentences will be, secondly, many people think that the cars are indispensable machines and they cannot live without them. Now, if you read the next sentence, you would feel that perhaps this is an illustrative sentence. When I say illustrative sentence means this is an example. Example of what? Example of the previous idea. Previous idea was what? Indispensable machine, and life would be impossible without them. If you take a look at this sentence, it goes this way. People who live in rural areas need private vehicles to go to towns for shopping, socializing, taking children to schools, etc. The word etc. also suggests us that, this was an illustrative sentence. So, to start this sentence, we'll be using a signal word, for example. Now, see the construction or the structure of the body of this essay goes this way. The first argument with firstly, and its result with the help of so. Then second argument. Second argument is composed of two parts. Therefore, the second part we connected with the previous with the help of and conjunction. And right next, we found illustrative sentence, illustration, to help readers understand what actually we mean by indispensable machine. So that sentence, should go with a linking word, or you can say a signal word. For example, you can use for instance also. It doesn't matter. Now, let's move ahead. Without a car, their lives would be very difficult. And if you read the next sentence, they would be forced to rely on infrequent public transport if it existed at all. Now, this was another argument which went how? Without a car, their lives would be very difficult. Previously, we talked about indispensability of something, and then we said without a car, their lives would be difficult. Now, the result, this next argument actually is the result of this fact of life, and then we are using a signal word as a result. It would be without a car, their lives would be very difficult. As a result, they would be forced to rely on infrequent public transport if it existed at all. Many families who live in the country have one or more cars. Now, this is what? If you bring in your mind the previous argumentation, based on the previous argumentation, now, what people have, done, that they, have, kept one or more than one cars. So we can use that is why. That is why is a signal word which shows this is what actually the logic is. And the result of that logic is this, that many families who live in the country have more or one cars. The last argument, they would be cut off from the rest of the world. Means if they didn't have the car, they would be cut off from the rest of the world. So there is a signal word which expresses this feeling, and that is otherwise. Otherwise, they would be cut off from the rest of the world. And then the last paragraph, for many people, a car is a necessary. It was sort of a jump, actually. There was no signal word which could tell the reader that now I'm going to conclude my, argumentation. And I have added one signal word to it, and that is from this we see, for many people, a car is a necessity. If you count these signal words, they are not less than 11 or 12. 11, 12 signal words missing in this text. Like missing what? As if joints are missing. If joints are missing, so all these sentences, they were only grouped together without any logic, without any sequence. When there was no logic, there was no sequence, and readers also, felt perhaps there was no progression also. I mean, when your sentences are not logically linked with each other, they are not in proper relationship, to each other, of course, the feeling of progression, of course, will also be missing. So this is how, we use signal words, and that is what actually the function of these signal words. They let your text, hold together, and readers can very, very smoothly, transit from the very first sentence of your text to the last sentence. This is what actually, when I was saying, that signal words are like, text patterns. Like we have patterns, and we can, based on the previous patterns, we can predict about the next patterns exactly the same way. Based on the signal words, we can predict about the relationship between sentences, and we can also talk about that what actually I'm discussing now and what would be coming next. Here, now I would like to, discuss with you different types of, signal words. There are 12 different types of signal words, and I'll show you their examples. And I would request you that, you at home not only study them carefully, but try to use these signal words into sentences as a practice, so that you could really understand how they are used. And, then I'll give you a brief practice if I found time, towards the end of my lecture. Let's take a look at the first type of signal words, and we call them continuation signals. Continuation signals means, let's say, in your text, in your paragraph, you want to, let's say, discuss 5 arguments, okay? So continuation means the first argument should go by first of all, second argument secondly, third argument thirdly, then moreover, furthermore, what is more, finally. Now, this is called continuation signals. If you, let's say, in one paragraph, there were 5 arguments, and you did not use, not even a single signal word, its impact, its effects, of course, reader would be lost. He would take these 5 sentences as if, like, have got nothing to do with each other. No logic link, inside. So you got to use continuation signals to give a message to your readers that this is my first argument, this is my second argument, and this is my final argument. So that's actually the function of, these continuation signal. You can, like, see a few more on the screen, like also, likewise, next, with, and one reason, similarly, a final reason, and finally, last of all. These are some examples of the continuation signal words. Second type is change of direction signals. If you take a look on the screen, although, despite, however, in spite of, the opposite, rather, while. Now, you can understand, when we say change of direction signals, it means, like, if you remember the previous example which we were actually doing together, benefits of private vehicles, in the very first paragraph, we used one transition, one signal word, however. Now, if you remember, in the first argument, we talked about the benefits. And right after that, we started talking about the drawbacks. This is called change of direction. Change of direction means, from benefits to drawbacks with the help of however. Now, however is a signal word which helps the writers to introduce change in the direction. A few more you can see in the second column, but, different from, in contrast, nevertheless, on the contrary, still, though, conversely, even though, instead of, otherwise, and etc. Please keep in mind that in our last lecture, when we were talking about Greek presentation style of your, information, and there I said, that in Greek presentation, writers do discuss the other side of the coin. And what signal words we'll be using to discuss the other side of the coins? Of course, change of direction signals. We'll be using in contrast, contrary to this. So these signal words, you'll be applying to move from one side to another side. Now, the third type of signal words, we call them sequence signals. Like first, second, third, or ABC, or last, since, later, next, now, while, until. So these are sequence. They are used to, mention order inside your arguments. The fourth type is time signals. Of course, time signals means, they'll be talking about the time factor, what is past, what is present, what is future. So, time signals mention the question when in your writing. Like some examples are when, lately, at the same time, once, or immediately, final, during, now, little by little, or after a while. So these are time signals. They talk about time and they answer the question when in your text. The next type is illustration signals. As you know, we make our writing more readable, easier for the readers by introducing different tricks, I would say, to our writing. And one of the tool is using illustrations, examples, using personal experiences, for example, analogies, for example. So this type of signals we use, which we call as illustration signals, to, of course, introduce examples to our, writing. For example, a few signal words are in the same way as, such as, for instance, and then specifically to illustrate, much like, similar to. These are some illustration signals, which we can use. Let's see the next category. Next category is emphasis signals. If you want to emphasize on any particular argument, you want to give it a little more stress, for example, or you want to underscore that argument, you want, rather more attention of your reader towards some particular point, then you use such signals so that they could, read them with great care. Some examples of emphasis signals are a major development, a significant factor, a primary concern, a key feature, a major event, a vital force, a central issue, a distinctive quality, above all, by the way, especially important, especially relevant, and many more are on the screen. Of course, I'll be giving you some handouts as well, and all these signal words will be present in those handouts. You can, of course, keep them in your record, and of course you can go through them again and again until your concept is clear. And of course you are going to use them into your sentences, so that they really become part of your vocabulary. And tomorrow when you go about writing, you make a very good use of these signal words. Let's go ahead. Next type is cause, condition, or result signals. Examples: because, for, while, that, as, so that, yet, resulting from, if, from, then, until, whether, therefore, thus, consequently, and many more. So this is what, one type of multi-paragraph composition we discussed was cause and effect. To express cause and effect, of course, you will be needing some words which, would map out ideas for your readers, and they, of course, will be the signal words which are on your screen. Our next type is spatial signals. Spatial signals, again, if you remember, we talked about one type of paragraph, which was spatial paragraphs, which talk about space. So when you are discussing spaces, and when you are talking about the where, W-H-E-R-E, where factors in your writing, of course, you will be using some signal words, and those signal words are you can talk about directions, for example, east, west, north, south. You can talk about here, there. You can talk about everywhere, front or back or center, left and right. So these are, some spatial signal words which describe spaces. Let's move ahead. This is our ninth type of signal words. We call it comparison and contrast. So whenever you discuss, especially in examinative writing, where you compare and contrast things, and the starters can be like and, to, either, more than, even, much as, but, yet, opposite, and though, and of course a few more. Towards second last, conclusion signals. When you are going to wind up your text, you will be using words like, for example, for instance, thus, or hence, okay, to conclude, for example, in a nutshell, for example. This is how, you conclude your text, and a few more examples you can see. As a result, from this we see, hence, consequently, in conclusion, last of all, finally, in summary, therefore. So this is how, you conclude your texts. Now, these are slightly different from what we have discussed so far. These are what? These are non-word emphasis signals. Non-word emphasis signals means, look, we call it bold types, actually. Technically speaking, this is bold type. Now, bold type does not mean, your one word or your one sentence or a phrase or any, fact or figure which you have tried out, in your text is made bold, actually. No. Bold types actually means all such techniques which we can use to highlight something in your text. Yes, making some word or some fact and figure bold is also one technique. Sometimes you made it, you make part of your text italics. You sometimes underline, some words, or you can prepare some subheads, or, you can put brackets as well. Sometimes you put, in, commas also, inverted commas, see? And on your screen, I have given out all possible non-word emphasis signals, like the first one, exclamation point. The same, sign of exclamation you can use, or you can underline it. You can italicize things. You can make your text bold. You can use subheadlines. Then indentation of paragraphs, I mean, the work of tab you can use. Then graphic illustrations, if possible, you can use, some pie charts, some flow charts also, some diagrams, I mean, you can use. Go ahead. Then numbered points, 1, 2, 3, or ABC, then you can use, quotation marks. So this is how non-word emphasis signals, you can use. Okay, let's now do one more exercise together to see, different types of these signal words, working in there. Like on your screen, you can see one piece of writing, and in bold types, the signal words have been used. Like creative thinking usually involves 5 stages. Now, the word is stages, and stages shows what? Which signal word it depicts? Of course, classification. Let's go ahead. First, the problem is defined. Now, first is another signal word which shows sequence. Second, creative thinkers saturate themselves with as much information as they can find. Now, this argument is with the second, and this is second argument, and that's, again, the use of sequence signal words. Then is another, sequence words, and the sentence goes, then comes the incubation stage. Next is another. See, 4 signal words which talked perhaps about the 4, let's say, stages. First sequence, and then second sequence, and then next sequence. So these are 4. Next, problem solving moves to an unconscious level as the mind ponders different possible or even impossible solutions. The incubation stage, then again, classification signal is followed by, again, is sequence illumination. By illumination, we refer to, now this is definition actually, we refer to a period of sudden understanding or insight. Finally again is a sequence. There is the verification stage when solutions or answers are critically evaluated. So total 9 signal words, we used in this text. One more small example. If we study a child's handwriting, certain personality types, now types is a classification signal, are revealed. First, again, sequence. First, if children have handwriting that is slanted only a little to the right or is straight up and down, they have a moderate temperament and use good judgment. This type, now type is a signal word which shows, of course, classification. This type is usually, affectionate and sharing. Second, now second is, again, sequence signal. If the handwriting slants to the far right, they are usually emotional children who react quickly. Their quick responses are often negative responses. The third, now third is, again, a sequence signal word. The third type shows classification. The third type, children who write with backhand slant, are very logical, unemotional, and sometimes very insecure. Therefore, now therefore shows actually stop. I mean that you are now going to perhaps wind up all what you discussed before. Therefore, the world seems to revolve around themselves rather than around friends and loved ones. Well, this is what actually the function of these signal words. Let's recapitulate, what we talked about. These signal words are transition words. And they, create patterns inside the text. Their function and their use is that they make the reader's job easy. Readers can very easily transit from the first idea down to the last idea without any confusion. As I told you before, these signal words act as maps also. I mean, the way maps, help, these travelers, exactly the same way, these signal words help the readers that where they are now, what will come next, and how they will be led actually. Different signal words give you very different information. As I told you before, like sequence signal words, for example, if there is mentioned first, so automatically, reader is ready to receive another argument, let's say secondly. If there is a second, so he is ready for, let's say, thirdly. And this is how, like, you know, the story goes on. If there is any, for instance, or for example sort of word, it means that writer is trying to, you know, illustrate what he, you know, mentioned before. However, are such signals, like, you know, which can discuss, you know, the other side of the coin, the other side of the picture also, the other aspect, like, you know, writers can talk with the help of, you know, such signals. Then there are some important signals, you know, which we use to summarize, actually. There are signals which we use to conclude, actually. So this is how these signal words actually work inside the text. A text without, or a paragraph without signal word, practically speaking, from the reader's point of view, is no paragraph, just a group full of sentences, have got nothing to do with each other. The moment you introduce signal words, what happens, you know, your whole text holds together, and a logic is introduced, you know, and readers can very easily move from one sentence down to another sentence. This is what signal words are. I hope you enjoyed this and understood, actually, and I hope, you know, that at home you will go through the handouts and you try to, you know, put these, you know, signal words into practice by making, you know, sentences. In your handouts, you know, I also have given, you know, some sentences as an exercise, you know, which you can do yourself. And you can make use of, like, you know, these signal words to combine sentences to produce that, you know, transit factor, you know, in your text. With this, thank you very much. See you next time. Bye-bye.